Anybody can shout out because I want some answers.
We don't allow any isolation. We
Okay.
don't allow others to isolate themselves. So when you're grieving, that's our natural instinct, most of us, is to, we don't want to be a burden to someone else. This hurts so bad. I can't talk about anything else or even listen to someone else talk about anything else because I'm so consumed with the pain that I want to isolate. When you notice that someone's isolating themselves, I guess you do whatever you can to pull them back with you.
Yeah.
And that could be doing things like you want to do things.
Go for a walk.
You can make me a casserole anytime.
Okay. Okay. Green bean. I'm not doing green bean, but I'll do something else. No.
But I mean, I think that we just have to be sensitive and aware to know when someone is isolating themselves, even in the midst of even in the midst of a crowd, they're isolated. So we don't allow that isolation. We say, you're not alone. You're not alone. I'm not going to let you be alone. I'll sit here with you in your aloneness.
Yes. Yes. Thank you, Rachel. And I want to ask you specifically, and we've had this conversation, right? So how could people have showed up for you, right? As you look back during that time, if you could have told people then, right, how they could have showed up or done something different, what would it have been?
So for me specifically, the passing of a child, I just know that everywhere when someone hears that, it's, what can I do? So it was one of the situations where people I barely knew were at the funeral, and I had so much support and so much love, and just everybody showed up for me. But then after the funeral and maybe those couple days after, it kind of stops, I mean, which is natural. It's nobody's fault. It's just,
right.
That's when it hits you the hardest, or at least for me it did, because then you feel like all you have time for is, feeling horrible. It's, there's no distractions or like people hugging you or food or people all together in one space. And to kind of piggyback off of what she was saying with my personal defense mechanism is I want to be by myself, and it could have been dangerous. It really could have been, because I felt like I had nothing left to go on for. And my mom is somebody who has always, I've suffered with addiction myself after all of that happened. And she never once judged me for the way I was, I hadn't showered, my house was a mess, or whatever the signs are. She was somebody that was like, get dressed, we're going to go do this. Didn't want to, but was so glad that she made me do those things. And she still does that. She still checks in. I mean, I've been clean for 8 years now. And yes. Yay. Thank you. Thank you. But she's still, she's one of those moms that, like, I'm a grown woman and I have kids and engaged and I'm very independent, but she still worries about me.
Yeah.
And she still checks, and she still, she's not nosy, but she, wants to make sure if something stressful or, bad happens, she's going to check in.
Yeah.
And that's what I need. Even though I don't want it at the time, I need it.
You need it.
I need someone. And for me, it's her usually. You need somebody to kind of be like, no, you're not going to sit here in your pajamas for days. We're going to do something.
Mighty care. Yeah. What you were saying. Yeah. Gabby, did you want to add anything to that? How can people be there?
I think just creating space, being there, you don't have to say the right thing, because there aren't any words that are going to make it better. Right. If that was the case, we would all feel a lot better because we would have those magic words. My best friend's mom died when we were 23, and I set alarms in my phone on big days, on anniversaries, and to check in and send her memories when I thought of her, and to not be afraid to say her name and to remind her, because that was one of her biggest things, was no one wants to talk about my mom. People are afraid to mention her. So we want to keep her memory alive. So please keep mentioning her and talking about her. So the other thing is, like, it's especially right after it happens, people don't know what they need. So a lot of people will say, "Oh, just let me know if you need anything. I'm here if you need anything." But they don't know. If you don't know, you can barely function. So saying, "Hey, I'm going to come over and take your dog for a walk," or "I'm going to bring you some groceries," and being the doer in that moment is sometimes the best thing you can do for someone.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, I've read that too. Like, decisions are what's really hard.
Yeah.
And I've definitely dealt with that, not necessarily following a loss, but just in my different of going ups and downs. There's times when just making any simple decision just seems like a huge task. So for a friend or family member to say, like, "Hey, I'm going to take you to lunch. I'm going to bring you lunch," or "I'm going to do this." And then you kind of can't say no because you do sort of want to isolate sometimes. And but I want to just circle back a little bit to the friendship thing.
Please.
Because for me, I have definitely found out what real friendship is, because it's not positive vibes all the time. We're only here to have fun and just have a good time. Your real friends are the people who are there for you when it's hard, when they don't know what to say, but they care enough to be there anyway, even though it's uncomfortable. That's just those true friendships that you have. And I think as all of us age, we sort of find out, maybe I don't need as many friends. I need my quality friends and value those relationships. But yeah.
Else want to add to that?
I'm going to concentrate on the things you probably should not say.
No, go for it, please.
And, saying you're going to be okay sounds good, but it's probably not what they need to hear, because it's very general. And at that moment, they don't think they're going to be okay.
Right.
Sure.
And and also saying that, after it's gone on for a while and thinking that maybe they should be beyond this already, saying to them, well, don't you think this has gone on, enough, and maybe you should get back to your real life or something? That's also not the right thing to say. Being very supportive and maybe offering to take them to a grief class or something like that is better. Holding space is ideal. Listening, ideal. Knowing if it's somebody that's very close to you and knowing them very well, knowing what they need at the time, knowing at the time right after, they're going to need to keep their mind occupied with other things, possibly. They're going to go through huge waves of grief. And, just even doing the dishes sometimes is just a good thing to do to get your mind off of it. And as time goes along, they gradually change into longer, more complicated grief sometimes. And sometimes professional help is needed. And encouraging somebody to get that is not a bad thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to ask about that, when people tell you to just kind of get over it, right? Or this is long enough. And people actually say that. Like, that's a real thing. I know people have said that. And I'm always so amazed by that first of all, they have the audacity to say it, but then also that they think that it is accurate, right? That you would just get, like, how do you get over a loss of someone, like someone that was, important in your life, or something that was a traumatic event in your life? Because again, grieving is just not for a person, right? It could be situations and different things. How do you tell a person that, right? So I've always struggled with that when people say it. And so again, we talk about what not to say, and then so I want to really talk about what do we say or what do we do, right? Because I am one of those people that I don't know what to say, and someone stopped me outside. And they were saying that they have a friend that had a diagnosis, right? That came back, that is back. How do you respond to that, right? What do you say? Because really, we want to cry. We want to cry, right? What do you say? So you want to cry, you want to, your eyes get big, you look sad, and then this person is seeing you look sad. They're already sad. They're sad too, right? So how do we show up for people in a real way that's authentic, right? And really support them through those times, because you hear cancer, you hear these big diagnoses, and we immediately associate it with death, right? And this person is leaving now. they have an expiration date. We all do, but now it seems a little bit more,
Real.
yes. So, so we show up, we create space. Are there any words to say? Are there any things that we can say to comfort?
Yeah.
And I'm asking for myself. Like, I really want to know.
I've got a not to say leading into a what to say. So no one wants to hear I'm sorry.
And see, I say sorry all the time.
Yeah,
I
and
don't
because
know.
so what I'm sorry does is puts it on the person that you are apologizing to say
It's okay.
It's
it's okay
Yes.
and it's not. Or thank you, which feels awkward. When I want to get the kids talking about their grief, I say, what do you do when someone says I'm sorry? And they just like, I have no idea. What do we say to that? They didn't do it. So what I typically say is being as transparent as possible. I wish I had words to say to make this better for you.
Yeah.
And I don't.
Yeah.
I wish I had the words. I'm just so glad you told me. Thank you for telling me that and providing, letting me in, because it's important that we keep talking about it. So thanking them for being vulnerable and sharing that information with us, I think, is a step. And usually that helps them open up a little bit more.
Yeah.
And helps provide that feedback versus apologizing.
I know it. I know.
It's just an instinct though. Cause
it is.
I get it.
Because you do feel bad. You don't, what do you, it's like, oh my goodness, and, because when you see it even on social media and people, announce things on there, that's what everybody says. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. And that's
Sending prayers,
Condolences.
good vibes.
good vibes. I know, like, oh my goodness. Did you want to hear that? I mean, seriously, good vibes.
I didn't have social media back when the big thing happened, but that would have been just kind of like
Natural.
not
Yeah.
the greatest.
Yeah.
But it's like, the thing is, you don't want to. It's not like they're doing anything malicious. It's like they care and they want to make sure that that they care. It's kind of like an automatic thing. When people have a terrible loss or something bad happens, it's like they automatically just, I do the same thing. I can't even say that I, have it right when I hear about that for somebody else. But I just know that for me, for someone to just tell me it's okay to feel this way right now. Like you don't have to stop, or cover it up or hold it in. It's okay. You should feel this way right now.
Yeah.
You won't maybe feel like this forever, but for right now, it's okay. It's okay to be in so much pain, crying and, doing whatever it is you have to do. I mean, some people just need to hear that. It is okay.
Yeah. 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 Giving them that permission, right, to feel what they feel. But then also, as you all talked about, showing up and saying, you've been feeling this for a couple of days. Let's go out and take a walk, right? And having that balance and being there for them, right? I really appreciate that. Marilyn, did you have something? You have something to say?
Yeah, I have. I mean, if your friend gives you this diagnosis and you're sad about it, it's okay for you to be sad and just grab onto them and hug them and you both cry together. That's fine. You're there with them in their grief.
Yes, I think we absolutely weep with them. And that's our initial reaction, right? They've already internalized it themselves, and now we're internalizing it. That's our initial reaction, is to weep with them and to hold them. But then we take a step further and we say, I'm going to share my calm with you. I can see the storm that you're in from the outside. I'm going to share my calm with you. And what does that look like? Anything that's on the outside that's providing anxiety, I'm going to handle that for you. Can I pay your consumer's power bill? What can I do to remove some anxiety? I'm weeping with you, but then I'm going to share my calm. And you can have as much of it as I can give you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. I want to kind of talk briefly on how our grief impacts our relationships, right? Because sometimes while you're grieving, you could be married, in a relationship, have children, have to go to a job, right? You still have to function and do things, right? Even though it's difficult. How has that, or how has that impacted your relationships? kind of navigating through that grief. And, and Chancey, I'm going to ask you specifically, since you shared, in regards to recovery, how did that impact, right? While you were kind of, because it's like two Chanceys, right? You have this Chancey, then you have that Chancey, right? The friendships in that life. And then hopefully, so I know you have some friends that have journeyed onto the other side, so to speak, with you, but some of them you had to leave behind, right? For the betterment of yourself and for them. So how did that impact the relationships?
That's a strange question. So I shaped it out. So I didn't want to fall because I felt a deep sense of sadness towards it, because my life got extremely better very quickly. But I knew what it was to experience such a dark side of life and feel trapped in that. And instead, so I call it going to the throne. So I went into prayer. For me, it was a reminder in prayer that, like, I'm not helpless. My ability over here to start to function very well, start to learn everything I can about recovery, start to shape out, like, what my principles are, what my values are, what my morals are, and start to exemplify that in my everyday life. That way, if I do ever have a friend, because it didn't feel right to me just to be like, well, I'm well now and you're unwell. I'm good and you're bad. Like, my brain couldn't reconcile that. So instead, I turned that grieving process into a practical state of mind. And I let that spur me on to get on this side and get to work and stand tall. You know, that way it's still one of my favorite things. It's kind of weird, but see one of my friends come through a support meeting door, because I'm ready. I have a squad. I know everything I can know about the recovery community and be able to assist them and walk with them as they start to get well themselves. I wasn't helpless, you know. So
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, because that journey through grief, sometimes we do have to leave people behind, right? I mean, and I say that, and not even just with recovery, period, right? Sometimes there's people, and then some people can't handle our grief. They can't handle it, right? I mean, sometimes they feel like you've been sad long enough, and or they don't want to hear you keep talking about it, right? People really are like that. So how does that work when you are through that process and you have people that you may have to or put on hold, right? Kind of pause the relationship.
There's some distance, a little distance there.
Yes. I mean, because sometimes it is when you go back, when you talk about self-preservation, that is a part of that, right? Sometimes I have to put this on hold because you are not
helping.
Yes, in this moment right now, right? So what does that look like?
To my anxiety and my grief, and you have to just set a boundary and say, we'll revisit this when I'm in a better place, because you're not taking me to a better place. And that's the direction that I'm going, is to get myself in a better place. And so when I'm there, we'll revisit and see, what's left to salvage. If there is anything. Those aren't your people.
The ones
and I think say that those aren't your people.
Yes. And I think you kind of alluded to that earlier in regards to having to navigate that as you are on your journey, right? Who is really there and who's not there. And then sometimes when we are journeying through something, we are not best for them. Right. So it's sometimes us too, right? Where it's like, we're not best for them. And so we have to kind of say, it's not you, it's me. Right. And we need to just kind of put this on hold. Gabby, you want to say anything?
I think my view on it is watching families grieve as a unit. And at the Children's Grief Center, watching families come in and seeing two siblings and a mom who are grieving dad, and they all grieve differently. Their grief looks one wants all the pictures up and they want to see dad's face every day and they want to talk about it, and one wants to stifle their grief a little bit, or they might not be ready to look at pictures that day. So it's facilitating that conversation of what is best for the family, and that's going to be day to day. So just making sure we're transparent and open about what our needs are when we know what those needs are.
Anybody want to answer that? Well, So Marilyn, in regards to you being a death doula, right? How has that looked? Because I know when I first met you and you told me that, I thought that was very interesting. Because I do feel that in that process, people are we're on our own, right? We
Right.
sometimes in some families that death has been the only death you've experienced, or you may have known like the neighbor down the street, you found out they passed on, but somebody very significant in your life, and sometimes people don't talk about it. They don't some people you don't even see them cry or mourn it, right? Visibly you don't see it, and so then you have this feeling like, well, am I supposed to do something too? Am I allowed to cry? Can we cry together? So how does that look like for you trying to help people navigate through that journey of passing on?
For people to navigate through the journey of passing on, as has been said, it's extremely individual at how they're doing it. And again, what Chancey said was, everybody that's very transparent, everything gets better faster when everybody can be transparent, but not everybody can. So it's very individual.
Well, give me some examples. Like, what's some examples of maybe something that someone you've helped or something like that? Just because I really want us to try to give people a little bit of resources and just kind of like some information. So what are some examples of maybe a situation that you helped someone through, and what did it look like?
So I would say that, being very transparent is actually pretty rare. A lot of families are very complicated, and the person who is passing has different relationships with different people in the family. And to get everybody on the same page, it takes a strong backbone of somebody. It may not be the person who's passing. It may be a doula, it may be another family member, but somebody has to make plans to go forward, and this person is going to die, or to react to a death that happened kind of suddenly. So, I say it's very individual because each family is different. Getting through, first of all, there's quite often anger.
Sure.
For whatever reason. Anger that the person passed away. There may be anger with siblings. There may be anger with another parent. I mean, there's quite often anger. So you have to mitigate that and get around that. And everybody is going to come to grief as they are. So it's complicated. That's a really good way of just putting it, is it's complicated. And some people are very easy to work with through the process. Some people are in denial through the entire thing.
Sure.
It's very rare, I think, that people are very open and transparent and can understand everything that's all the decisions that have been made or not made. There's always some emotion around it.
Yeah. I want to kind of pivot the conversation a little bit. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. I was thinking about going back to navigating through their life changing, right? And how you help them through that, right? I mean, I think about, so I'm going to be very transparent because I've been really upset about this. I feel like a lot of older women have not discussed menopause enough. Okay. Nobody talks about it. He's talking about not talking about things. And then I realized that all these people have just been walking around life regular and drinking coffee and smiling. And really their bodies are on fire and going through complete hell. And nobody talks about it. And I am going through some beginning stages. And I'm like, this sucks, right? And so that is also something that you have to grieve, right? Because our bodies do different things. Chancey, you don't have to jump in on this conversation, but I just...
Thank you.
But, I think about that, when you see people get older, when you see people, like you said, if they lose different abilities, right? How do you work through that? Because people don't say things, and I am amazed at the fact. I mean, I've heard about menopause, perimenopause, right? I've heard about it, like through reading things, but I've never heard anybody sit around and just talk. Like people are supposed, like our elders are supposed to sit us down and tell us
What to expect.
what to expect, right? And nobody talks about it. And then you tell them, I'm on fire. And like, oh yeah, I went to, it's like, no, you're supposed to be telling me. So how do we journey through that, right? Our bodies being different. I think about my uncle. I have an uncle that, I love with my whole heart. And he's always been like the one that could fix, literally fix anything, create things, do stuff, anything. And he's getting older. And, his body is a little different and he's not as strong as even though he thinks he still is. But I think about, watching that. That is a part you have to grieve. You have to grieve that, right? You have to, you mourn the fact that it's like, oh, and then you feel bad. But then you don't want to feel bad because that's a part of life. So how do we navigate through these changes that is not necessarily a physical transitioning, but it is something that's tangible that we see, right? That's every day, and you watch it, and it's not going to go the opposite direction, right? It's going to continue to go this direction. How do you do that? I don't know if I'm asking the question correctly, but and maybe Gabby, you can chime in on this. I know that you have a specialty with like children's grief, but you also deal with families. But how do we grieve? That part of life where our bodies are changing, you can't do the things I used to be able to do cartwheels. I would not try it right now.
What do you need to do a cartwheel for?
Because it's fun. But it's things that we can't do anymore, right? And
Absolutely.
So how do we venture through that? And I talk about women because our lives from the beginning till the end, apparently, it just goes through all kind of stuff, right? And so that nobody talks about, and so we just have to figure it out on our own. And so, how do we journey through that? How do we understand it and then come to grips with life is different, right? And that because that denial part is a big part, right? So how do we do it? Gabby, say something.
I think with a lot of it, we're almost split into a before and an after.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly like before menopause, after menopause. Ooh. I am very pregnant, and as I'm nearing the end of it, I'm like, who am I going to be after this? I'm about to change. And like, I have anticipatory grief for my current self of who am I going to be afterwards.
That's a real thing.
And so I don't know if I have an answer. I think what I've found is talking to other moms and just like you said, talking to other women going through that, and like just talking to people who are in your space who have been through this and can give you a light at the end of the tunnel.
Is there one with menopause?
I don't know yet.
Okay.
I'm not quite there.
Did you want to add anything, Christine?
The before and after was the one thing that I thought of before this all started tonight. Like, I think everybody can relate to at least one event in their life being like, this is how things were before and everything is different after. And most of us have multiple events of those type. Yeah. But yeah, I think the other thing I wanted to say too, when we talk about what not to say. Yeah. Everything happens for a reason.
Oh, yes.
No. Just don't say it. Just don't say it. Yeah. Because my reason for things like mental illness, why would that be? What good does that do in the world for somebody to have that, right?
Right.
And so all we have is helping other people that go through it. And that's why I think it's important to talk about stuff. Because all we have is other people who are going through the same thing or have been through it and can say, yeah, it lasted this long for me. It might last this long for you. And you just don't know. But it varies so much. All of this varies so much, how long it's going to take you to get to the other side of something. And then, you're never really the same. You're never that same person after, these big life changes.
Right.
No, it's true. Yeah.
I'd like to add, celebrate everything. I've worked with kids with disabilities for the last 25 years, as well as having a husband that's losing ability year after year. And so we're not looking at what you're not able. We're looking at what you are able. And we celebrate that he was still able to hang my hooks on my new deck for my plants. He was still able to do that, get out there with his walker, and still able to do that, we celebrate everything.
Yeah.
With kids with disabilities, you have to look at the ability, not what they're not able to do,
Yeah.
and celebrate those things. We're all going to get older. We're all going to be like your uncle and not be able to do anything.
Well, he still does things. Don't tell him. Don't say I didn't say he can't do anything as
We're
much.
never doing a cartwheel again, Aaron. We are never.
Don't say that.
There's room out here.
You know,
Yes.
it's not going to happen.
Yes.
It's not in the cartwheels. We're not doing it. But look at the things that we can do.
Yes. I think that, and we're gonna take it to our audience participation now here in a second. But I really think that a lot of times we don't talk about stuff, and it's such a tragedy. It's so unfortunate that we don't talk about things. And I don't know. I mean, the more I learn things, I'm like, why are we not talking about this, right? Because it's happening. Like, we're all experiencing these different things, right? And then nobody's saying anything, and we just walk around life like it's not happening, and that is just so odd to me. And so I'm so thankful that you all took time today to really share some vulnerable stories. I truly appreciate it from like the depths of my heart, because I know it's not easy to share, especially when people are looking at you. And so I appreciate that. I really do. It means a lot.
I appreciate you so much.
Yes.
And there is nobody like you, that you don't walk around like nothing's happening. You're going to make things happen.
Yes.
And I appreciate
Yes.
Thank you. We are going to turn it over to our